please take their seats. We'll get started again. All right. So I'm Annie Cooper. I am the manager of account management for Lifemap, and I'm really excited to be here, excited for all of you to be here with us today. And just really quick before I get to introductions, I just wanted to acknowledge someone in the room here. So Pat Ashaya, if you could please stand for just a moment. Pat has worked tirelessly along with our travel partners to get this trip set up, made all the plans, arrangements, all the details, and I just wanted to say a special thank you on behalf of Lifemap and the rest of us here. So if we could just say thank you. We appreciate all of you. And without further ado, I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker, Arby Kelly. She is known as the master of effective communication, the expert on the power of body language and facial expressions. She is a trainer and coach on science-based body communications, and I'm personally really excited to hear this presentation. So please give a warm welcome to Arby Kelly.
Hello. You've already decided what you think of me, and everything that is coming out of my mouth is only further confirming your initial analysis. You've decided if you like me or dislike me. You've decided if you trust or distrust me. You've decided if you respect me. And almost all of that was decided based on my nonverbals. Nonverbals, particularly, include outer appearance, clothing, you guys look great. It includes body language, what I'm doing with my hands, my face, my feet, voice tone, how I sound. And then finally, that last smidgen of communication is the words I'm actually using. And so when you meet people, these are the things that you use to figure out what kind of person they are, how you feel about them. And every subsequent interaction will only confirm your initial conclusion. Because once we make up our minds about people, it is very, very difficult to change them. So, just by a raise of hands, let's talk about the first impression I made with you. And I do this because I want you to actually think about what you think of me. Usually we just take it for granted. Oh, I met this person, they were like this, moving on. But I want you to actually think about why you think about me the way you do. So just by a show of hands, please be honest. Nothing you can say will hurt my feelings at all, I promise. So how many of you saw me up here and thought, she looks friendly? All right, how many of you thought, maybe a little unfriendly? Yeah, it happens. How many of you thought, oh, she looks confident? How many of you thought, maybe a little cocky? How many of you thought, she might be lesbian? So did my husband when we first met. Yes. So when it comes to making an inaccurate first impression and having to work really hard to overcome that, I know from experience. So when we meet someone, after we look at their outer appearance, their clothes, tattoos, glasses, makeup, hair, we'll start to notice their body language. What are they doing do they look aggressive? Do they look timid and shy? We'll start to notice how they sound, if they're talking at all. And only then do we really care about what they say. And so these are the things we use to take the measure of a person. And when we meet someone, we will sort them into one of 4 different categories. And only one of these categories is good for business. Most of the time, we end up falling into the other 3. So during this presentation, I want to give you some really easy, actionable things you can start using right away to get into the best category. First, I'm going to run through these categories. Number 1, on the pointer finger, because it's number one, the very best, you want to be here, the friend category. So if you've ever met someone and instantly liked them, wanted to get to know them, felt safe with them, this is the category you put them into. And this is the category I've been trying to fall into for you. Anytime we've met or anytime you've seen me, I've been trying to use likable and confident gestures so that you think, I wonder who that person is. They seem friendly. I want to get to know them. This is the category I've been trying to fall into for you. Number one, friend category. The second category is the predator category. This is on the middle finger, for a good reason. So if you've ever met someone and instantly disliked them, raise your hand if that's happened to you. Everybody. This is the category you put them into. And it might be something about them is just like, I just don't like that person. Or it might be, that guy is a psychopath and he's actually trying to kill me. So it could range the distance from a physical threat, someone is dangerous to you, to a social threat. Maybe this person is going to steal all your friends and you're going to be thrown out of the tribe. If you've ever met someone who instantly repulsed you, this is the category you put them into. Category number 3, the romantic partner category. Because if it goes well, they'll put a ring on it. So, if you've ever met someone and thought, wow, they are attractive, this is the category you put them into. It is not super convenient to be put into this category when you are trying to sell people things. It's more helpful than some of the other categories, but not as useful as the number one friend category. Just to put that out there. Finally, category number 4. It's on the pinky finger. Nobody cares about their pinkies. If you had to pick one finger to lose, you would probably pick your pinky. Don't need them, don't care, just fine without them. This is the indifferent category. And if you've ever met someone and forgotten their name, forgotten their face, forgotten what they do, forgotten you've met them before, this is the category your brain has sorted them into. And in fact, most of the people you meet will be put into this category because your brain has a lot. It's really costly to run your brain. Your brain, when it's thinking hard, it takes up a lot of calories, it takes up a lot of energy, and so your brain will take whatever shortcuts it can. And so, instead of noticing every single thing, of every detail, of every interaction, of every person you meet, of everything that's going on in the room around you, you don't do that. Your brain only focuses on 2 things. Something that's good for you, something that's bad for you. And if a person isn't good or bad for you, your brain doesn't need to know who they are. And it will basically delete them, sees them as moving furniture. So if you've ever had someone forget your name, forget your face, forget they've met you, you may be falling into this category. And in this category, it is very, very hard to do business. So when you want to be taken seriously, when you want to get attention the moment you walk into the room, when you want people to listen to your advice and take the thing that you know is best for them, you need to get sorted into the number 1 friend category. Any questions so far? All right. So just so you know, I am recording this presentation, and there are going to be a lot of things you missed the first time. So if you want me to email you a copy of the video for this, just put your name and email here, and I will send it to you afterwards. That way you don't have to focus so much on taking notes, and you can listen and hopefully have some fun. So now that we've talked about the 4 different categories, let's talk about what you need in order to get sorted into the best category. Now, when I started out in high school, growing up, my parents thought I was slightly autistic because I had such a hard time connecting to people. I easily offended people. I didn't get along with people. I made people mad. I made people sad. People and I did not get along. I was the one hiding in the library with a book, or if I was at a party, hiding under the table to play with a dog. People and I were not really good friends at all. So everything I've learned about people and communication, I built from the ground up. I learned the hard way. And it started when my mom gave me a book about people skills. How many of you have heard of How to Win Friends and Influence People? Well, they have a version for teenage girls, and that is what my mom gave me. And that's how I got started. So I learned what makes people like you. And I started to read about body language. I started to read about people skills, psychology, communication. And one thing led to another. Now, most of the time, whenever I tried to pick up a new skill from a book, things would go very badly wrong. I first learned about eye contact from books. I first learned about mirroring from books. And when I tested those skills to try and get a boyfriend, boys scattered in front of me. So these skills can very easily go wrong, which is why we're going to be doing a lot of hands-on work today. But finally, in college, after meeting my husband, making a horrible first impression, and working really, really, really hard to win him back over, which eventually we did, I finally found a private human behavior research lab. And there I was formally trained and certified in the science of body language and communication. So everything I'm teaching you today has its basis in science, and it is designed to be easily applicable, so you can start using it right away. And after a lot of study there, and a lot of my own testing, and a lot of trial and error, I've come up with 4 basic people skills that if you can master these 4 areas, there is nothing you cannot do. These are the things you need to succeed in sales, in management, in your personal relationships, in persuading your kids to do what you want them to do, and in having a happy marriage to your spouse. If you can get these 4 skills down, you're good. You've got it. You're there. So here are the skills. This is something I call the DIAL method, D-I-A-L. Starting from the bottom, likability, authority, insight, and diplomacy. Likability, authority, insight, and diplomacy. You'll notice it's L-A-I-D, but I couldn't find a tasteful way to use that in business. So we have the DIAL method. So, likability. Let's start with likability. If people don't like you, they will go out of their way to spite you. They will go out of their way in order to handle your work slower, in order to exclude you from events. They will turn away. They will not offer you resources. They will not offer you help. Because if you don't have likability, you didn't get put in this category. You probably get put in this category. So, you need likability in order to succeed with people. Likability is usually not actually how nice of a person you are. Likability is all about the friend signals that you're sending. So, if I was to walk up here and say, "Hi everyone, I'm Arby Kelly. Thank you for coming in today. I'm so excited to talk with you." You would probably think, "Wow, she's friendly, she's likable." But if I was to come up and say, "Hi everyone, I'm Arby Kelly. I'm glad you're here today. I'm excited to work with you." Do I come across as quite so friendly? Not so much. Not so much. And so this is something, if you've ever had people tell you, "Wow, you look angry," or "Wow, you look grumpy," this is a signal you're not quite sending the likability cues that people are looking for. And likability signals are really easy and small to send. As simple as wave, handshake, keeping your hands visible. That is a form of likability. A genuine smile, an eyebrow flash, a chin nod, a head tilt. These are tiny, tiny cues that if you send deliberately, people can't help but like you. So I'm going to show you an eyebrow flash. That was it. It was over. "Hi, nice to meet you." Eyebrow flash. And an eyebrow flash is something we use when we see someone we like, someone we recognize, or when we hear something interesting. So whenever you meet people, an eyebrow flash is a really great way to say, "Hey, I know you and you're pretty cool." So what not to do with an eyebrow flash? Eyebrow flashes held for too long are a little bit creepy. So no sustained eyebrow flashes, and you don't want wiggly eyebrows, all right? That's pretty creepy too. So just one up and down movement should take 1 second or less. You can also do a chin nod, or a genuine smile, or a head tilt, or all 3 of them together. These are the signals that make people like you. because they're signals that say, I'm harmless, I care about you, you're interesting and you're cool, and we like people who like us. So if you can do anything to increase your likability, from learning how to throw a genuine looking smile on command, which is pretty helpful, or to learning the other likability cues we talked about, that will be incredibly helpful when you meet people. Let's talk about authority. That's the next one. Authority, this is all about confidence, competence, status. People look at your body language to decide if you know what you're talking about, to decide if they have to listen to you. And if your body language is sending signals like, oh, I'm really nervous and I don't want to be here, people are not going to listen to you no matter what your job title is. So, you want to make sure you are consciously choosing to do things with your body that tell people you belong where you are, you're confident where you are, so that they will listen to you. So really quick, I want you to stand up. While you're at it, go ahead, stretch. Oh, we've been sitting for a while. Oh. Now I want you to put your feet together. We are going to go with some low-powered body language. You're nervous, you're stressed, so your shoulders are going to come up towards your ears. Feel that tension? Notice if this ever happens to you in a meeting, because if it does, you're showing low confidence. So tense shoulders, we're going to look down, tuck your chin a little bit, put your arms in front of you. So elbows should be pressed against your sides, arms can be crossed, hands folded, whatever. How does this feel?
Like an underwriter.
All right, so this is not particularly confident or engaging or powerful. This is tense, nervous, protective. And this is not what you want to be doing, so we're going to stop it. Roll your shoulders back. Chin up. You belong here. You're proud to be here. You are going to take a slightly wider stance with your legs. And now I want you to keep track of your elbows. If your elbows start to touch your body, you've shrunk down. You don't need to dangle them. You don't need to get like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson biceps so they dangle from your sides. Just keep your shoulders back and let them dangle by themselves. This already takes you from nervous little pipsqueak to competent professional. Now, of course, sometimes you see people who take an even wider stance, and feel free to do this with me. They'll have their nose up in the air, they'll have their elbows out, their arms as far away from their bodies as they can get. And these are the people who come across as cocky, arrogant, over the top. Now, it's okay for your boss to take this pose, because he does have this much power. But the boss should be the only one in the room who's taking up this much room. So, go ahead, take a seat. I hope you were able to notice how your body felt as we went through those poses. Because the things that make you look powerful will also make you feel powerful. And that means you don't have to fake it so much. You can actually believe and feel what you're projecting to other people. So far, we've dipped our toes into likability, and we've covered a tiny bit of authority. I'm going to pause and open it up for questions or comments. How are you feeling about this so far?
Good.
Good, all right, happy to hear that. Anything not making sense? Anything you want to delve into?
I'd like to know that most of the meetings that I have are in a seated position. So are you going to go through that?
Sure, we can do that. Let's talk about confident seated positions. I'm going to steal this chair. All right, a lot of the same principles still apply. When it comes to seated confidence, it's good to keep in mind how many chairs you're taking up. Growing up, I was taught to sit like a lady, which meant legs crossed. My stuff was tucked in. I had my stuff close, so I wasn't inconveniencing anyone else. And this is not taking up a lot of space. Whereas, on the other hand, my brothers would sprawl out like this, and they would be taking up 2 or 3 chairs. So both of those are 2 different extremes, and neither of those are quite where we want to be. Instead, try and see if you can take up, instead of less than a chair, or instead of 3 whole chairs, 1.5 to 2 chairs is a really good place to be. And so that can be feet shoulder width apart, an arm along the back of this one, or maybe you've got your stuff on the seat next to you. That's totally fine. This looks much better than this. You can also do an alpha cross, which is what it's called when your ankle is resting on your knee. This is a very Western pose. You don't see it a lot in Asian countries, but it is a very confident gesture. And these are just some of the things you can do to spread out. So the three things I would remember when it comes to authority body language is how many chairs are you taking up is the first thing. And then finally, look at your knees and your elbows. If your knees are touching each other, your elbows better not be touching your body. If your elbows are touching your body, your knees better not be touching each other. You want to take up a little sideways space. Now, an even easier way to remember this is vertical space and horizontal space. If I'm taking up a lot of horizontal space, but I'm slouching down, this doesn't, yeah, I'm taking up some space, but it's not super confident. So you want to keep in mind that vertical space, where if you don't feel comfortable spreading out, sprawling out, spreading your stuff, getting a little taller will go a very long way. And I'll let you see that from the side. So a lot of people have average posture. Some people have worse than average posture. Some people have abysmal posture. None of this is powerful. Instead, if you can have excellent posture, people will naturally assume you're excellent. So yeah, your mom was right. Hands out of your pockets and stand up straight. All right, did that answer your question? Excellent. So let's talk, oh yes ma'am.
I was gonna say, like, so then if somebody, let's say you're like hanging out in a meeting, you know, and somebody comes in, and then you like get up to greet them, like what would that ideally look like? As opposed to like flip the table over on accident, you know, is that a good idea or?
Flipping the table is something I would avoid at all costs.
Okay,
Write that down.
Yes, in case you didn't know. So when it comes to meeting new people, there are certain things you do want to convey. You want to show your likability and your authority. And a lot of people think they need to choose between one or the other. I can either be feared or I can be loved, but I can't be respected. Well, respect is what you're going for. And respect is what happens when you have authority and you're liked. So that's what you want to be thinking of and looking for when you meet someone new. And so when I meet someone, and if any of you were paying attention when I was introduced to you, I was trying to do this. I would have excellent posture. I would make eye contact. I would use a social gaze where I look at a certain part of your face. I would have a small smile. I would do an eyebrow flash, and then I would go and shake your hand and say something to you. And so we can practice that later if you want to. But even changing your eye gaze changes the way people think of you. Changing your hand pressure changes the way people think of you. And so those are the things you want to be really aware of when you first meet someone. Do you guys know a lot about eye contact? All right, my mom always told me to make good eye contact, but I had a really hard time figuring out what that meant. And so then in high school, I read a book on body language, and it said you should make as much eye contact as comfortable. And I didn't know how to read when people were uncomfortable. So I took that to read, make as much eye contact as possible. So in my quest to get a boyfriend, I would find a cute boy, and I would look at him, and he would look at me, and he would look away, and I would keep looking at him, waiting for him to turn, and like we would have magical eye contact. And as you can imagine, they did not often turn back and make eye contact. It was more like scatter, okay, wow, creepy. So eye contact is something that can cause you a lot of trouble or can smooth the way for you. So here in Hawaii, you will notice there are a lot of different cultures melting together. You have a lot of the Micronesian, Polynesian, Asian, and the Western cultures coming together, which means if you pay attention, you will see a lot of these different body language and eye contact norms coming into play. But say, let's pretend we're on the mainland. We are in the West, and let's say we're in Utah. Super white, super European, almost all the same body language norms. You will notice there, people will they will connect eyes about 60 to 70% of the conversation. So they are making eye contact for the majority of the conversation. Whereas if you were to go, say, to Japan, for them, eye contact is more like 15 to 30% of the conversation, if that. And so what happens when you make too much eye contact with someone, like I did to those poor boys? Aggressive, uncomfortable, creepy. What happens when you don't make enough eye contact, like how I felt when they refused to look back? Dismissive, avoidant, they're ignoring me. So you can see how in Hawaii, you have these two different ideas of what good eye contact is and the consequences when people get it wrong. So, all right, Japanese student named Mari comes to Hawaii, and she meets an American student named John. And so John is trying to give her good eye contact, which he thinks is 60 to 70%. And Mari is trying to give him good eye contact, which she thinks is 15 to 30%. He is going to think she is ignoring him, she is dismissive of him, she is disinterested. She is going to think he is a creeper because he's just staring at her all the time. And so that's one of the ways that eye contact can go badly wrong. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. In fact, my favorite part of eye contact is that you send different messages based on where you look on people's faces. You can change the way people feel based on where you look on their face. And so, if you've ever had someone look at you, a boss or a parent, where you're in trouble and you can feel it, if you've ever gotten the look, there is a certain eye pattern that they are using. And if you are aware of the pattern, it loses its power. On the other hand, if you've ever had a really good conversation with someone and you felt like it's going so well and you're like gazing into each other's eyes, there's a certain eye pattern you're using. If you've ever had the feeling someone was hitting on you, someone was super into you, there's a certain eye pattern they are using. Do you guys want to know those eye patterns? All right, which one do you want to start with? All right, so what not to do in your business meetings and what to be aware of if you see people make this eye pattern to you. All right, so men looking at women, they are paying attention to hair, health of hair, length of hair. They are paying attention to bone structure and to necks. It's weird, but the intimate gaze is what we use when we are deciding whether or not someone should be put into the romantic partner category. So it's really normal to give an intimate gaze when we first meet someone, and then if we decide, yeah, they fit in this category, we will give it to them over and over because they're so pretty, we just can't help but look at them. So don't be alarmed if you get an intimate gaze at first. Only be alarmed if it keeps cropping up. So an intimate gaze is what happens when someone looks at your eyes, your mouth, and your neck, and sometimes lower. So if you notice someone checking out your jawline, checking out your neck, that is an intimate gaze. And again, if it happens when they first meet you, don't be alarmed, they're just scoping you out. But if it happens over and over again, that's a big clue, they think you're awesome. So, if someone looks at your eyes, your mouth, and you notice them glancing down to look at your neck, that is an intimate gaze. If you catch yourself giving this to your client, stop. Be a professional. So that is something you should pay attention to. On the other hand, if you're hitting on your spouse, give them this gaze a lot. So that is the intimate gaze. Let's talk about the social gaze. The social gaze is something I do whenever I meet someone new and I'm shaking their hand. I will even count in my head as I shake their hand, eye, mouth. Because this gaze, when you give it to people, this is a gaze people naturally give when they're with someone they like, respect, and admire. And this gaze happens because you are trying to read the other person. You're trying to almost get inside their head and become one through your conversation. This is something we only give to people we really like and are having a really good conversation with. And so I will kickstart their brain into thinking that I really like them and that they should really like me by using this eye pattern. And here's what it is. Eye, mouth. And I will glance between these areas as we're talking. Now, some people are a little icky about mouths. They'll be like, oh, mouths, can't look there. So if you have to go eye, nose, or eye, chin, so be it. Just don't dip lower, because that's worse than looking at the mouth. So eye, mouth. When you meet someone, this is the eye pattern you should give them if you want to establish rapport right away. How many of you want to see what this looks like up close? Or are you good guessing? Do you want to guess for the rest of your life? All right, I will come around and I will social gaze you, and I will say what I'm looking at as I look at you so you know what it looks like. Look at my eyes, see how they move, so that the next time someone social gazes you, you can social gaze them back. All right, eye, mouth. 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 So you'll see my eyes dip down. You'll notice, let's see. So in the social gaze, they dip down to wherever your mouth is. In the intimate gaze, they dip down further. So look for the dip. Judge the dip. All right, do you guys want to see this as well? All right. You did, all right, good. Eye, mouth. Eye, mouth. Feel free to social gaze your partner if you've already been social gazed. Eye, mouth. 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 All right. So that is the social gaze. How awkward was that? Just on a scale of 1 to 10. Just a bit, yeah. But that is not as awkward as the power gaze, because the power gaze is designed to strike fear into your heart. So, yes, go ahead.
I'm probably not covering this. I might need that gaze.
Well, then I'll just do a brief overview. All right. So in the social gaze, you're looking at the eyes and the mouth because you are trying to read the expressions and therefore the emotions of the other person. In the power gaze, you just look at the eyes and the forehead because it doesn't matter what they feel. You are the one in charge. And so the power gaze is all about asserting control, whereas the social gaze is about give and take. So if it comes to an argument, or if someone's not listening in a class, I will shoot them a power gaze. And usually it is like, and they're back to listening. But in an argument, I should tell you, everything I've learned, I've tested on my husband just to see how it works. And so when I first started testing the power gaze, I did it while we were having an argument. And so my husband is a big guy, and he was an only child who came late to his parents' lives, so he was like the precious baby. And so he was a little spoiled. And so in an argument, he was often very, very used to getting his way. And so I had to use all the body language skills in my possession in order to make it clear that, nuh-uh, it was my way or the highway, not his way or the highway. So we were having an argument, and in these arguments, he used to do this thing where he would get big and loud, and he would like lean in to try and, I am the one who's gonna win this argument. And so what I did is I started power gazing him. And immediately, he went from leaning in, big body language, to he took a step back, and he shrunk down. And I was like, yes. So I had my first clue that the power gaze worked. But my husband is not an idiot. And he listens to these presentations, and he figured out what I did. So he started power gazing back. And when you have two power gazes going on at the same time, there is a tendency to turn it into a bit of a staring match, and whoever looks away first loses. And so I tried that at first, but he can stare for a really long time. So eventually I had to try a different strategy. And instead of like saying, yeah, this is a fight and I'm gonna try and see who's gonna win by power gazing him back, I switched to the social gaze. And that was me basically refusing to fight non-verbally, even though my point still stood verbally. And so what I was saying to his subconscious brain as I looked at his eyes and his mouth with a soft face and non-threatening body language was, I'm your friend. You don't want to fight me. I'm on your side. And so within a few seconds of me starting to social gaze him as he's like power gazing back at me, he would and look away. Yes, yes. So if you are in a situation where someone is getting angry, you can start with a power gaze to try and put them in their place. And if that doesn't work, then you can use the social gaze to say, I am your friend. You can trust me. I'm on your side. And your body language will say that so that your words don't have to. Does that make sense? All right, question in the back.
Are you opposed to using a power gaze with an applied head nod?
I've never had to do that, so there's a question over here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about people who don't blink.
People who
what's
don't
the way to
blink.
get around that? Because I've stared around the face, but now I'm going to avoid the neck.
Mhm.
But now I know I'm going to look at the neck because I'm supposed to avoid it. So what's the way?
All right. So it depends on how you want them to feel.
Yeah.
If they are trying to intimidate you and you want them to know you're not intimidated, you can power gaze them back and just blink frequently and be like, yeah, I'm blinking. That doesn't mean you win because I'm better than you are. You can do that. You can play that game, or you can switch to the social gaze where it's like, wow, you're so angry and that's so odd. You should really calm down. And that's what you're saying to their brain, even though you're not being rude. Because if you were to say to a person to their face, calm down, what do they immediately say?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Don't tell me to calm down. So you say it with your body language, even as you keep your words in check. And that is the thing that gets them to chill out. Yes, ma'am. Was that a question? Okay. All right. So we've talked a little bit about likability. We've talked a little bit about authority. Let's talk about the other two. So likability and authority are what you use to make your first impression. They are the things you are consciously projecting when you first meet someone in order to make your solid first impression. But a first impression, it gets you halfway in the door. It gets you a cut above the competition, and it matters. But a first impression does not close the deal. That is where the other two skills come into play: insight and diplomacy. Insight is what allows you to read the body language, voice tone, and facial expressions of the people around you, to pick out what they are secretly thinking and feeling, but not saying. Because of course, you know this in sales, people lie all the time. They tell you they're interested when they're not. They'll tell you they'll call when they won't. They'll tell you this sounds great when it doesn't. And so you need to be able to tell when people are just not telling you the truth. That is what insight is for. Because emotions and intentions and motivations will play out in the body before the person even realizes they are feeling them. And we know this because we study people. We like to put them in labs and do things to them. So people will show anger a few seconds before they realize they feel it. This is why an argument can seem to come up out of nowhere, because they're getting a little irritated and they don't realize it, and you can hear their irritation, which makes you irritated before you realize it, and so you show it, and then it just escalates from there. But if you can notice exactly what messages people are sending out, you will know how they feel before they do. And when you know if someone feels good about a deal or bad about a deal, instead of asking them to close something when you can see on their face they're not into it, you know what objections to handle. You know what's going on in their head. You know how to handle them. That is why insight is so important. So if you've heard about body language, you've probably heard about crossing the arms or people looking up and to the left when they lie. All of that is total BS, totally false. If you look for information about body language and communication on Oprah or on Google, you're going to be very disappointed because most of that is crap. So let's talk a little bit about insight, how to read people. When people are trying to hide something, no matter what it is, it will leak out. It might leak out in their word clues, which we'll talk about in diplomacy, but it will usually leak out in their body language. It will come out in the emotions their face is showing. It will come out in the directions their feet are pointing. It will come out in where their eyes are pointing. It will come out in what they're doing with their hands. And so you need to be aware of what that is and what those signals mean. Now, unfortunately, I was not hired to give you an 8-hour presentation, so I can't go into all of this for you, as much as I would love to, because really, that's fun for me. But I can start to answer some of your questions. So before we move on to diplomacy, what questions do you have about insight? What can I help you with? All right, then I will tell you a little bit about the one thing you need to know. So when it comes to reading people, there is a trick, a very, very easy trick, and that is to mimic what they are doing, because there is a loop. It used to be thought that emotions caused body language, and it was a one-way street. But now we know it's not a street, it's a circle, it's a cycle. Emotions cause body language causes emotions. And so it ends up being this flow, which is why if you fake a smile, you start to feel less irritated. If you mimic someone's angry expression because they're shouting at you, you start to feel more irritated. So when someone is making a face or doing a thing with their body and you're not sure what it means, mirror it, mimic it, and then notice how you feel. So let's practice this for a minute. This is the expression your client is making. What do you think it's about? Disgust. Very good. So do they like what you just told them? That's probably a problem. You should probably find a way to fix the problem. How about this one? Not happy. All right, very good. How about this one? All right, you guys are doing pretty good. Now, I have to warn you, I'm broadcasting these expressions very broadly, and I'm holding them for a long time. That's not how it works when people actually make them in a real life situation. I will count down for you. I am going to show a nonverbal signal that usually signals you are about to lose the sale, and I'll show it in 3, 2, 1. That was it. It is tiny. That was just a quirk, and that was a really obvious quirk because it's hard to fake a micro expression. And so if you want to learn more about this and you put your email on the thing, I can send you more information about how to read people. But let me tell you, aside from looking at the face and mimicking the face, one good thing to look at is what they're doing with their feet. Can I have all of you guys stand up for a minute? All right. I want all of you to point your body and your feet towards me, over here. All right, very good. Now keep pointing towards me, even as I move. So what do you think you're telling me with your body as you follow me across the room? You're engaged. You're paying attention. This is actually respectful body language. To point yourself at a person as they're talking to you, as you're talking to them, shows that you're paying attention, that you care. Now, angle towards that way as I stand over here. Now what does it look like? If I'm the speaker, uninterested, it almost looks like there's a giant pile of pizza boxes in that corner and you guys are ready for lunch. So, notice what people's feet are doing. Go ahead and sit down now. We use our feet to run towards good things and away from bad things. So our feet are one of the very first indicators we have of what people want. We go towards what we like, away from what we dislike. So if you are talking to someone and you notice their feet are pointing towards you, good. If you notice one foot starts to angle away, there is something going on in the back of their mind. There's something else that's going on. Maybe it's they want to invite a friend into the conversation. Maybe it's you're really boring and they want to leave. Maybe they're just looking at all the other cool things to think about. There's a lot of things it could be. But if you notice both feet pointing away, now the entirety of their mind is on something other than you. So notice what their feet are doing, where their feet are pointing. And it's a good idea in a meeting, if someone is talking, angle towards them. If the boss is in the room, angle towards the boss. Because that is a really good way to show respect, show consideration, and show that you're listening. All right, really fun. Let's, Craig, would you be willing to stand up really quick?
Sounds like I don't have a choice.
Thank you. All right, so what if he's the one who's talking? How could we show him respect right now? How does that feel?
Wow.
Powerful.
Does it feel like they're listening?
Yeah.
Feels like they care. Thank you. Guys, come back to the front. So, as a fun public speaking tip, if you're ever speaking to a group and you feel like they're not paying attention, this is a great activity. Have them stand up, angle their chairs towards you, and sit back down, and suddenly you are about 50% more interesting than you were at the beginning. So, notice what their feet are doing, and notice what your feet are telling them. That is a toe dipped into the water of insight. Now let's talk about diplomacy. Because you can have all the best body language in the world, you can make the best first impression possible, you can read people really skillfully and know what's going on under the surface, but if you can't negotiate with them, if you can't navigate through their objections, through their defenses, through their words, you're probably still going to struggle with sales. So it's important to know how to have that diplomacy, to handle the objections, to assert yourself in a way that is both firm and confident, but also gracious and kind. And that is the final key of diplomacy. So if you have the likability, people want to work with you. They're drawn to you. They're willing to help you. If you have authority, people respect you. They're willing to listen to you. They're willing to follow you. If you have insight, you can tell when you're being lied to. You can tell when people are hiding things. You can tell when things aren't quite going to plan. And if you have diplomacy, then you can address what you see and get them on your side and negotiate them into agreement. Those are the 4 key skills you need to succeed with people. That is the dial method. So at this point, I want you to pull out your cell phones. I want you to open up a new text message. Often after these presentations, it's hard to know what to do next. We covered a lot of things. Where do you start? So I have designed a small quiz that if you take it, it should take you about 2 minutes tops. It will email you your results so you can find out exactly what your homework is. So you know what next steps to take, what to start with. So you are going to open up a text message to this number, 38470. 38470. And you are going to send one word, extra. Wait, it might be extras. Hold on, let me check.
We want more than one extra.
More than one extra, yeah. All right. It's just extra. We're good. Just the singular. And if you send that message to 38470, you'll get a link back saying, hey, here's your homework. Go ahead and take that when it's convenient, and that will let you know what your exact next steps should be. All right. So at this point, we do have about 25 minutes to play with, and I would love to open up the floor for questions, or if you want, we can play around with some more body language drills. What would be best for you?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're kind of moving into sort of the Skype world. So, right, so your interactions and meetings aren't necessarily in person. some are over the phone, obviously, but Skype is quite often used in our world. So I guess, how can we translate some of this via Skype?
Good question, very good question. So one of the things you should remember is the power that height plays. There is a reason I have pointy hair and I wear shoes that are really tall. I have like a 3-4 inch heel. And that is because people assume that your height correlates to authority. So it is a really easy perk you can give yourself by wearing higher shoes or having taller hair. But with Skype, it gets even easier because you can angle the camera. So if the camera is looking up at you, you look taller and more capable and more authoritative. If the camera is looking down at you, you look a little more childish. So that is one easy thing you can do on camera. Outside of that, I would remember to look at the camera and not the face, because if you're looking at at your face or at their face on the camera, you look like you're looking down. And so on their camera, you look like you're not paying attention at all. So instead of looking at the face, look at the camera. So you're actually making eye contact with them. And then outside of that, one thing we haven't talked about is trustworthiness. How many of you like to be seen as trustworthy? That's a pretty basic thing. That's an important tenet when it comes to sales. Almost every person I've talked to has a story about how insurance has screwed them over or someone in their family over. And sales just by itself is a very dangerous game. You already have a bad reputation just because you're in sales. And so it is crucial for you to come across as trustworthy and as safe, someone they can depend on. And one of the easiest ways you can do that is, it's actually where people look when they first meet you. Where do you think people look when they first meet you? Neck, eyes, I've heard shoes. That is where people settle. They'll certainly take that in. But through tracking eye movements in our laboratory, it was found that people actually glance for a fraction of a second at the hands very first. Why do you think that is?
Make sure you're not gonna hit them.
Exactly.
Not gonna hit them. What else do you need to know? If they're just gonna punch you, what else can they do with their hands? People hold weapons in their hands. We hide things in our hands. We take things with our hands. Our hands they show our intent. If I'm about to come steal your stuff, my hands will do it. If I'm about to punch you in the face, my hands will do it. And so that is why police say, show me your hands, because they know the hands cause danger. And if you can't see someone's hands, you don't know what they're up to. They might just be sitting in their lap, or they might be having a gun under the table, depending on which Western you're watching. So we look at people's hands very first to show us if they are a threat. And so if you're walking with your hands in your pockets, or folded, or in your pockets, or under the table, people can't see your hands, and they feel like you're not being honest with them. That is why when I stood up here, I did this, hi, I'm Arby Kelly, and here's my hand, and I'm clearly showing you where it is. This is why when I meet people, I'll often do a wave and a handshake, because I'm trying to clearly show them where my hands are. Even when I'm standing in a checkout line, and there's like a counter between us, I will keep my hands up here, so the person across from me can feel safe in my presence. And that is also important on Skype. Yeah, you can't shoot them through the computer, but they still like to know what you're up to. So keeping hands visible is one of the most important things you can do to show trustworthiness. All right, I'm not suggesting you walk around like this, but keeping your hands on the table in front of you instead of your lap, or waving to people when you first meet them. Keeping your hands at your sides instead of folded or hidden away. Those are easy things. Not necessarily easy. Those are simple things that will require you to break some habits, but will have a very large payoff for you in the end. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Talking with your hands. Now, this is something you will find a lot of conflicting information about, and most of that information is wrong. So you've probably been told it's bad to talk with your hands. Has anyone been told that? Yeah? Have you been told you talk with your hands too much? Yeah, that may be true, but in a study to discover which TED Talks were the most popular and what made them the most popular, that was conducted for all the TED Talks in 2010, the Science of People team took every TED Talk released in 2010 and studied every nonverbal signal through every second of these speeches, and it was a lot of work. And the thing they found, the biggest difference between the most popular TED Talks and the least popular TED Talks, many of which were on the same subjects, the most popular TED Talks used twice as many hand gestures per minute as the least popular TED Talks. Our hands make us interesting to watch. And so if I was to stand up here and just not do anything with my body and not really play with my voice and not really have interesting expressions on my face, I very quickly become boring to watch. And you're already finding other things to do, like touching your face or looking away. So instead of that, I use my hand gestures. I play with my face. I play with my voice. So hand gestures are crucial for talking to people. The problem is when you use too much or too little of them. So on this scale, it's easier for me to use bigger gestures because I'm talking to a larger room. But if I was talking to you one-on-one, it would be very weird if I was to suddenly start gesturing big or using really dramatic hand gestures. You'd be like, okay, she's a little over the top. But if I keep my hand gestures into what's called the torso box, where generally my hand gestures will stay in this area, I can gesture freely within them. And as long as they're not really like fluid, or as long as they're not like jerky or like crazy movements, those are still frustrating no matter what size they are. But if I keep them smooth and fluid, dynamic, then this seems natural. So keep your hands inside your torso box, keep the movements fluid, and as always, keep them visible. Does that answer your question?
Great.
Excellent. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What about touch?
Touch. All right, so I grew up in the LDS church, and one thing about the LDS church is that there's a lot of handshaking and hugging, especially at church. And so there were a lot of older guys in my ward who were like super old, and they would just think I was super cool, and so they'd want to come up and hug me, and I'd be like, ew, you're gross, go away. So I grew up not really liking to be touched. And so moving here to Hawaii, it was a shock because they hug everybody all the time, whenever they meet them. And so it was like, oh yeah, nice to see you. Oh yeah, nice to see you too. But eventually I got over it. So the thing about touch is when a touch is welcome, it releases oxytocin in your brain. This is also known as the cuddle hormone, the bonding hormone. This is the thing that makes you feel loved. If you like cuddling with animals or cuddling your person, this is why it feels good, because it's flooding your brain with oxytocin. Women and their infants, women's brains, as soon as they have children, start to be more wired for oxytocin, flooded with oxytocin to bond them with the infant. So oxytocin is really addictive. If your love language is touch, this is what your brain wants. But on the other hand, if a touch is unwelcome, instead of being like, oh yay, you start to be flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and it feels unwelcome. And sometimes if someone makes us an unwelcome touch can even trigger, oh, what are they called? That's a really bad touch. There's a flight or fight response which is triggered that lasts up to a limbic response. That's what it is. And that is a flood of hormones rushing through your body telling you you're in danger, and it can last for up to 30 minutes. So last year in Hawaii, one of the legislators, a male legislator, had to deal with a lawsuit from a female legislator because he hugged her a lot and she felt uncomfortable. And so for a lot of the people here were saying, oh, that's no big deal, everybody is hugged, like why is it a big deal? But I had an experience as a kid where I was on a bus going to my first job all by myself. I was all of 16, and the bus was pretty empty, and an older guy sat down next to me and started asking me questions about where I was from, where I grew up, if I had a boyfriend, whole 9 yards. And he was friendly, but it was really weird. And so I made up a boyfriend who liked to wrestle and was a pretty cool dude. I pretended to be from somewhere I wasn't, and I got off at a stop before my own and ran home hoping he wouldn't be able to follow me. And so he was friendly. While it bothered me, no one could have really pinpointed something he was doing that was inappropriate. But I ran home and I locked myself in the house and I cried for about 15, 20 minutes. And that's an example of a limbic response. Where, yeah, it was no big deal from his perspective, but it really freaked me out. And so touch can be tricky because welcome touch strengthens the relationship, unwelcome touch destroys it. So that's why it's really smart to be careful with touch. I will often, before I touch someone, say this is a person, and I'm going to touch their elbow or their forearm or their shoulder and be like, oh yeah, that's really funny, or oh, that's great, I agree with you. I will often fake a touch and not actually make contact. And I will just notice what they do as I reach out. And if there's any leaning back, if there's any tensing, if there's any loss of eye contact, I will not touch. But if it's casual, no big deal, then I will go through and actually touch. So there is such a thing called a touch map. And the theory is that the further away you get from the center of the body, the safer and more acceptable touch is. So that we greet each other with handshakes, high fives. Hugs are a little weird, but they only usually last for a couple of seconds. And so if I was to meet you and I was to touch you on the shoulder or on your forearm, it wouldn't be that weird. Where if I was to put my hand on your back, you'd be like, So keep the touch further down on the arms. Try to just stick to the shoulders. If you want to do a random touch, shoulder, elbow. That's going down. That's weird. Shoulder, elbow, something more casual. That will be a good touch that people like instead of a weird touch that they dread. Does that make sense? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
A lot of these techniques you're talking about across the table or face to face. What happens if you're side by side? Especially, I had a meeting where the person that was the most, I objected the most to me was sat right next to me. So the other two people across, which would have been fairly uncomfortable to go, oh, excuse me, let me sit on the other side with the CEO and the HR person. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. So that surprises me because usually it's the people who are right across from us who can feel the most confrontational if there is a confrontation.
Okay.
And usually to diffuse a situation, you do want to get on the same side as people.
Okay.
So in that situation, what you could do is where let's see, I'm going to pretend you are the person in this story. So we're side by side facing the same way. If you can angle slightly in and just start to kind of notice them, look at their face, and pay as much attention to them as you do the people across the table, that is one of the best ways to start noticing what's really bothering them. Because they might object to, let's say, option B, or whatever you're talking about on item B, but you notice from their body language it's something that happened in item A that is really pissing them off. And so you can figure out, maybe they're saying they don't agree with something, but you can notice something else in their body language where maybe it's not what's actually going on in the discussion. Maybe it is you yourself. Maybe they're just a horrible person. So
that's what I do.
You can do that out of the room.
Yeah.
So that is where I would start to use a little bit of likability to show them, I'm not taking offense at your problems with me. You show a little bit of authority to say, I'm not scared of you having a problem with me. You use your insight to figure out the exact emotion they're feeling, and then you use the diplomacy to actually get them to state what's really on their mind and get them around to your way of thinking. Does that help?
But sitting next to someone isn't a bad thing.
Not a bad thing at all. Very helpful, in fact, very helpful. Any other questions?
I have a question about sitting or standing. So we're in a meeting and everyone's sitting and you're presenting. Is it better likability wise or category? Is it better to sit with them and to have a conversation, or is it better to get up and kind of be more authoritative?
That would depend on how you are falling in both of those areas. If you feel the room they already like you, but they're not quite giving you as much respect as you want, then I would stand and address them that way. If you feel like they're giving you plenty of respect, and then it's safer to sit. So you don't have to choose between the two to be just likable or just have authority, but you can choose how to present them. So maybe you stand, but you give a lot of friend signals as you talk. Or maybe you sit, but you take up a lot of space as you sit. So either one you choose, you can mitigate so that you have both authority and likability. Yeah. Any other questions? Alright, then what I really want you to take away from this is that you choose how people see you. You choose the messages you're sending out. All of you dressed yourselves today. All of you are choosing what to do with your body, what to do with your eyes, what to do with your hands. You are the ones who are in control of how people see you. And so it's up to you to choose what to do with that. Up till now, it's been based on autopilot. It's been running on autopilot. But what I want you to do, just for a second, is turn it on deliberately. I want you to sit up straight. I want you to put your hands on the table in front of you, visible. I want you to angle a little bit so you are facing me. And then I want you to send me a friend signal of your choice. Eyebrow Flash, saw that. All right, one eyebrow, very interesting. Good. All right, I'm seeing some nods, I'm seeing some smiles. All right, these are what you can use in order to show people you're paying attention, you're capable, and you care. And now it's in your hands. So from here on out, you know that what you say with your body language matters. You know that people are telling you things based on their body language. It's up to you to figure out what that is. We've talked a little bit about what you can do. We've talked about what it means and what you need. Is there anything else I can give you now to make the next few days of practicing and using these skills easier? Yes, sir.
It just hit me. When you are mad and you feel angry, but you don't want to appear mad and angry, what do you do?
That is a very good question. This is where facial expressions and knowing what's on your face is very important. You should know how you feel and what you do with your body when you're calm. This is something that's also important for speakers, by the way. If you're nervous and you're like, holy crap, I need to give a speech, you should know what a calm person looks like, what a confident speaker looks like. So then you don't have to let your body language do the talking. You can say, okay, this person is really freaking me out and I'm really irritated, but I'm not going to give them that power. So I'm going to loosen and relax my body language. I'm going to spread out a little bit. I'm going to relax my probably angry eyebrows. I'm going to put a slight smile on my face, just a slight smile, and I'm going to start social gazing them. And then I'm going to bring out the big guns of diplomacy to find out what's really going on. I'm going to ask them my calibrated questions and use my labels to get them to confess what's really the problem here and get them on my side. So when it comes to conflict, this is what one of my upcoming online workshops is about, actually. It's helpful to know what your goal is. What exactly do you want to get out of this? Do you want to win? Do you want to beat them into the ground and stand triumphant? Or do you want to get them on your side so in the future they're still willing to speak with you? It's helpful to have that end goal in mind. And then what you really need to do is control your voice and your body language. Control your anger so that you can get them on your side. Because if you give in, they say if you give in to anger, you'll give the best speech you'll ever regret. That is not what you want to happen. The thing about emotions, they live in a really primal part of your brain. They are more powerful than reason. And so when we don't know what emotions we're feeling, when we're surprised by our emotions, we can't really react to them. We can't take control of them. So it's helpful when you start to feel yourself getting irritated, you'll actually feel it in your body before you realize it consciously that you're mad. So if you start to clench your fists or you feel your eyebrows moving, notice that. And be like, oh, according to my body language right now, I'm pretty irritated. Okay, I'm going to relax, relax, relax. All right, I'm still irritated on the inside, but I'm no longer strengthening that irritation with my body language. That is what I would do when I feel angry. Control my body language, decide what the end goal I want is, and then I have a series of tools I can use to get them on my side. All right. Any other questions? I will be here for the next couple of days. So if you see me around here and you want to ask me a question, I love to talk about this. I could talk for hours and hours, as you've probably noticed. So now it's in your hands. Consciously notice what you're doing with your body language. Look for ways to show the people around you that you care. Look for ways to show your confidence, to show that you're capable, because that will come through in your body language, and that is what people will believe, far more than your job title or whatever words you say. look for what people are secretly thinking and feeling but not saying, because it's coming through. We're not that good of liars. So notice what people are doing with their bodies. Notice what you are doing with your body, because that is the thing that will help you succeed with people, to help you succeed in sales. It has been my privilege to be here. I am so grateful for your attention. And if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Right, final announcement before we head out to there.